Welcome, Praetors, to the barren husk of Cthonia in the 31st millennium. Today we are continuing our chat on the Siege of Cthonia, and the first two parts of this campaign series were really about how the Traitor forces claimed a foothold on the planet, right? The catastrophic trap that was the drop pod assault on the Presidium Arx, but then a massively blundered counterattack by the defenders. And at this point, everyone has sparred, they've all taken and given quite a bloody nose. But as it stands, the traitors are just in a really strong place numerically. All attempts to bleed their army dry have not gone as well as Garius needed them to. At this point, basically, Varen is trying to get all of his forces marshaled on the planet now that he's swatted away the defenders. He has his own, staging ground to really launch big ground assaults. But he needs time to get these supplies down from orbit. And even though Garrus' attack failed, it still damaged the Titans. There was still ammunition and shells spent, so there's time needed to refit these things. But Varen, the leader of the traitors, is not about to let this time go wasted. It's about a month, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, from one of the little tidbits there, of him marshaling his forces. This is not an immediate kind of assault. This is a planet-wide conquering, so it takes a bit. But in that time, he sends out Alpha Legion headhunters all across the planet. One thing that's important to remember is Cthonia is their home world. They know about all these little underhive ways and passages through the mined earth that the defenders simply do not know. When you add the Sons of Horus' knowledge of Cthonia with the infiltration tactics and subterfuge of the Alpha Legion, this is a big deal. Also in this time, his next in command, Chieftain Rave, who royally messed up the drop pod assault, he's given approval to go assault the enemy head on. Now take your inducti and just go do raiding parties, basically. Hit supply lines, hit anything you can find, just test defenses. Between that knowledge of the defenses and the Alpha Legion's knowledge, we're going to get a real good sense of what our enemy is like. There was one brief story that I want to just kind of touch on here at the top. It is not really deeply elaborated on, but there's one moment where Chieftain Rave goes in and fights the 5th circle of the Thousand Suns. And yet again, Rave gets pushed back and assaulted. There wasn't actually a whole lot of intrigue to that one. It was more just you failed me yet again, Starscream, kind of a thing. And of course, opposing them are the Loyalist host. Garius has whatever survived the last few battles are limping back. He's now spreading out the Shattered Legions, those who, basically trickled in as reinforcements over the years. He sends them out you need to go deal with the Alpha Legion. Amongst their number is the Night Lords, Raven Guard, who also are known for sneaky infiltration stuff. So basically there's a whole shadow war happening without a lot of actual artillery and tanks and troops being deployed. But it is time to batten down the hatches because the plan is now set. We are in our final kind of episode or two of this series, because now that Varen has troops and a supply system and all this stuff, he's getting ready to start that assault. One thing I want to add up top here, if you like this video and you're interested in Horus Heresy or really any kind of miniature gaming stuff, please consider using one of the affiliate links I have down below. They're all meant to give you a discount when you check out, and at no cost to you, it throws a tip in my tip jar and goes directly to supporting me, my wife, our cats, the whole channel, and I am so thankful for everyone who does. And also, if you want to learn more about Horus Heresy, or really most miniature games, go check out Goonhammer. It is a blog online that has tons of tactics, reviews, just discussion, and just a wonderful resource for any players of just about any game. Alright friends, this is the long war, okay? Like I said, we're battening down the hatches and settling in. The Presidium Arx has really been identified as the hub. Right when they approached the planet, they knew it was the security central, but actually the Imperial Fist have kind of made it their home. They just made a whole new center of operations for everything. All the scouts, all the information they've been getting tells them this. So once the Arx falls, realistically, all the defense on the entire planet is gone. They were worried, the traitors were coming to the planet, that the defenses were all set up inside the hive, and that would make it a much larger process, but nope, Presidium Arx right there. It is a big fortress unto itself. It has 4 walls surrounding it. That's the first wall. And these are bastions that have huge cannons in them, gun emplacements, turrets. And then out from that is the outer wall, another series of walls that kind of ring the Presidium Arx that act as a further line of defense. It is a defensive superstructure. Now, each of these outer wall things has little forts that they call bastions, and what this means is it is a very imposing target when it comes to a ground war. It is a well-fortified, just absolute beast. So the Loyalists don't think much of it when they see Varen moving his forces directly towards those outer walls. What they don't really understand is that he's being quite a bit super intentional by broadcasting his moves. He's being very obvious about it. Whoa, look at these tanks I brought on this straight road. Where could I be going? You know, like basically broadcasting what he's doing. And this basically feigns Garius into responding, because you can't ignore it, right? It's like a distraction card effects. You gotta start moving troops, and you have your heavy weapons crew move forward if that's what the tanks are doing. You start allocating munitions. Never mind on top of the fact there's a whole shadow war going on between the Alpha Legion and the Raven Guard that's happening in the background of this battle. But as it's shaping up, like, it looks like Varen is just walking up to the main door of the most heavily armed fortification on the planet, like to knock and ask if they have a cup of sugar. But as Varen is going in with them, he is highly confident because he knows something that Garius doesn't. So this is where we're going to pause our story and talk about that shadow war that's been happening. I've kind of alluded to it twice now. And in that interim time where all these things were being marshaled, Varen sends his Cthonia veterans into the underground, and they find, like I said, their old haunts, their old passageways to circumvent watch patrols, that kind of stuff. And these scouts, I mean, they're functioning as scouts even though they're veterans, they find the remnants of that original Sons of Horus detachment that was there guarding Cthonia, the ones that the Imperial Fist simply couldn't root out because they just knew the underworld so well. Which means there's straight up 1,000 grizzled veterans just chilling right there. Like, that's amazing, with so much more knowledge about the planet and everything. In addition to that, there's a huge mortal contingent made of gangs. If you don't know, Cthonia, before the end of this story basically, acted a lot like Necromunda. We had a huge hive city. Necromunda had multiples, but this has one uber hive that was used to mine all the resources of the planet. So just imagine, you're playing Necromunda and a Chaos Space Marine jumps down and is like, you've all been hired, you're now in on the ground floor, let's turn you into Inducti. And all those gangers that you see get turned into Space Marines. Genetically altered, weaponized, redneck dirt people. And that's exactly what he does. If you don't remember, Inducti is like flash indoctrination. They hyper rush all of the things to make a Space Marine just because they want the basics to be able to run forward with a chainsword. And that's what these 1,000 Marines have been doing, is turning these gangs into Inducti. So there's actually a whole hidden army underground. And that's all a win. But with the leader of this particular force, these remaining 1,000 sons, his name is Centurion Boros Kern, which I love that name. The most interesting thing he offers is intel, because they've watched all of these forts and outposts get erected. They studied supply lines and recruitment parties, and it's important to remember this is all happening in the Underhive, which is in and of itself like an ant colony that goes to the core of the planet. I'm being facetious there, but that's pretty much what it is. And all of this is underneath the hive city of Traitor's Gate, which is immediately next to the Presidium Arx, meaning it's very likely there's tunnels that go to the Arx from the hive. Now, Garius has a limited number of troops. They do like patrols and sweeps through the various hive, tunnels and stuff like that, but there's just no way to account for all it. There's way too many places to pop out of. So that's what Varen is thinking about as he's walking, his tank army up the main road, being very loud about his coordinates. And one by one, the outposts along this road go dark. Again, it's just broadcasting stuff. And they're specifically headed in the direction of one of these outer bastions on the outer wall of the Presidium Arx called Bastion Aleph Prime. And you can kind of think of this as like the mini fortress on the way to the bigger super fortress. Now, Varen's army stops just outside of the range of the guns of this Arx, but still in view of them. Like, they're looking at each other, and all the Loyalists are like, what are they going to do? Like, there's no way that they just walked over the other outposts this easy. Like, how did they take them if they're just going to be so skittish about battle? And we find out why very, very quickly, because several termite drills, which are those big transports that have the big drills on the front, come up from the ground and start spilling out whole units and globs of Marines, those Inducti and Sons of Horus that were there underground. It's the old reverse drop pod assault. which I'm going to call the push-pop assault, just popping up from the ground. At the same time as that is happening, right? So now like their lines are totally disoriented. All the guns are facing way off on the horizon, and now the enemy is on their doorstep. And if they turn the guns from one to the other, whatever force they're not aiming at is advancing upon them and shooting. Meanwhile, the word bearers back up. I mean, I love this. They back it up like rednecks back up pickup trucks. Okay, they back up their rhinos that are just full of Galvor Bach. Which, if you don't know, think possessed Marines, but like to a next level. And they are just made of murder. Okay, like they run through guns, mines, barbed wire. Like it's taking so much to kill them because of all the demon power infused in them. And so they use the Galvor Bach to clear a path. Right, they take all the defenses, and then all of the Sons of Horus rush up behind them. And after, like, the deception about where they're going to attack from, and how these things are working in the outposts, not sending back reinforcements from, survivors of those battles, it ends up being, like, 500 defenders in this, like, outer bastion to about 3,000 Sons of Horus, which ends up being just about nothing. And with that, the outer wall is taken. So one step down. The first hole in the defenses of the Presidium Arx are defeated. Now at this point, they could go to their left or to their right and, hit the flanks of the other bastions and encircle the entire Presidium. But Varen risks marshalling his army in a single point and assaulting directly up the center to the main building. And his logic is pretty simple. If that all these bastions are as poorly manned as this one, they're not offering much of a challenge anyway. I'm just bleeding my forces. So, we cut the neck first, and then we can go hunt them down at our leisure. So the outer wall is taken, and his boys immediately, just because they're all hyped up on combat and stuff, they start running directly towards the next wall, the inner wall that surrounds the Presidium Arx. And this is where things start to fall into disarray. The idea was some of those surviving Imperial Fists of the 500 defenders were running towards those inner walls to, reinforce the next line. And a bunch of the Traitor forces just kind of lost control and just really wanted to hunt them down. So they kind of pulled the battle further out than Varen wanted. He wanted to just take the wall and pause for a second, do another good attack. But as the army starts to degrade, there are a series of massive explosions, and the Traitor Voxnet, their whole communications, walkie-talkie, whatever you want to call it, goes dead. And so now we have a situation where, they've taken that outer wall, but now Varen's army is kind of strung out in this dead man zone between the outer wall and the inner wall, because they were chasing after the Loyalists. And this is where we see the Loyalists again set another trap, capitalizing on the ambition of the Sons of Horus. The explosions that we heard opened tunnels just outside the wall of that Presidium Arx wallway. And Imperial Fists with disciplined bolter drills just absolutely unload. It's as if they pulled off some hidden doors and there was just whole legions of Imperial Fists standing right there, point blank, right? It's the opposite of the termite drill thing. You let them come to you and then you just open the doors and just unload. So now they have no communications. They don't understand what's happening. The people in the back that stayed with Varen on the outer wall can't tell what's happening. All they see is an immense amount of gunfire and all of their forces getting mowed down in this dead man space. Then, to the rear, the same thing happens at Aleph Prime, the bastion that they're at, this time with Cataphracti Terminators. And this is where Varen and Garius have their first head-to-head battle. As do Rave and the lieutenant of the Imperial Fist. His name is Adaris. He doesn't come up a ton in the story, but there's a second in command there. They have an epic fight in which, at the end of it, Adaris has the better of Rave, but chooses to spare him and basically declares to everybody, all the debts that the Imperial Fist owe the Sons of Horus are done. He's like, I have my honor, and I am choosing not to kill you because whatever. Which I think was kind of silly. I would understand if it was against a veteran, but Rave himself is an inducti captain, and so he doesn't have those same ideas of honor and pride, whereas I think if that same situation happened to Varen, it would have been a much stronger scene, but I digress. Now, backing out of this immediate fight a bit, we kind of get the sense now that this outer wall that Varen attacked was set up as bait, and the Sons of Horus fell for it again. They had a very lightly defended wall on purpose, The troops were supposed to fall back in a rather disorganized looking way to pull the traitor forces into this area, and then the trap was the doors open and all of a sudden all these loyalists are there firing at them. And this is really a situation where the traitor allies save the day more so than really the Sons of Horus, who are the characters of this whole thing, right? The traitor Tech Magos is able to purge the code that basically shut down their Vox network, and the Word Bearers manage to pull Varen forces out of the meat grinder. Because they have control, they're able to force units to do orderly withdrawals. The Tech Magos sends in his Thalax and cleanses the Vox network. The Word Bearers come in with bolter fire. And one thing that's noted is they're taking their time, but they're doing their job. They're not refusing to help. They're just not moving quite as fast as maybe they should be or could be. At this point, with the Vox network restored, Varen sounds the order to fall back to that first wall. Garius does not pursue. The Terminators basically bounce. And this ends up being a ton of heavy losses for the Sons of Horus, because this was the moment the Imperial Fists wanted. It really bled their enemy. And that's really the only kind of long, protracted Pyrrhic victory that Garrus has at this point that he can possibly hope for. So in the end, it's kind of a strange story because Varen won. He took the outer wall, which was his first intended step, but the aftermath of losing Cohesion bled so much of his army that he wasn't intending to. And at the end of this first day of the big end assault, when there's a lot of mixed emotions about how the day went, a message arrives from Terra. Now, if you don't know how messages are sent in the Warhammer universe, basically an astropath will project a message, and it's more like a vibe and a few mental images out into the ether, and other astropaths, meaning the ones that are working for the Loyalist and the Traitors respectively, can receive those messages and basically decipher what the code or message is. And this is the last message that Cthonia receives from Terra before total silence. The sky burns. The sun shines red as blood. All the fiends of hell itself have been loosed against us, led by the Prince of Traitors himself. All the long years of our struggle are reduced to this. One battle that shall echo across history until the stars themselves grow dim. This is to be the finest hour of the Imperium, and those that die in its defense shall live forever in glory. And that is where I want to end the story. But as always with these videos, I like to talk about, why is this cool? Why is this interesting? What happened in this story that is meaningful? Well, obviously we're bearing down on the final battle, right? He's making his preparations to attack the Presidium Arx. We're getting down to the finish line. The Sons of Horus conquered the outer wall, but they took, like I said, a huge bloody nose to do so. And one of the themes that I love that they keep hammering on with the traitors, and I feel like it's done not in the most kind of rub your nose in it way, but the lack of cohesion is consistently the weakness of the traitors. It happened on Calth with the Word Bearers, it's happening here, but I like the fact that with the Sons of Horus, it's more subtle. It's more like military structure and not wanting to, or just being impatient, rather than a full de-evolution of, what it means to be a Marine. But this message from Terra knocks all the steam out of everybody. It hurts both sides, and let's talk about what I mean. So, first off, what both parties are feeling is a mix of sorrow that they're not at Terra fighting, because the message said, this is the penultimate fight of humanity, and you're not there. But also, knowing that epic fight is going on makes all of the fighting that they're doing now seem very insignificant. Particularly to the Loyalists, it feels very defeating to know that not only are we not fighting the battle that matters, but if that doesn't go our way, none of this matters either. They're looking at this we didn't stop the tide. We didn't divert enough away from Horus's fleet heading towards Terra. Remember, that was kind of the whole thing. This is a splinter of that fleet. And now there's no way that we can contribute in time. And it also means, this is another thing, since that battle has started, that means there is no reinforcements coming. No one's coming to help you, Garius, at all. Right, the Siege of Terra is a bit, you might call it a big deal. And no, Dorne doesn't have any spare troops to send to Cthonia. And frankly, Cthonia doesn't rank high on the priority list now that Horus is already at Terra. The whole plan was, we'll keep Cthonia because we don't want them to use it as a staging ground, and then he came from a completely different direction, so it's there's no value here. And so it's just very demoralizing. But the traitors have kind of a different energy about them. This news still makes the battle seem very insignificant for them. Of course, there's glory and honor to be had fighting at the War Master's side at Terra. But also, there begins to be this strange, like, manic energy that's really being fed into by the Word Bearer's leader, I think his name is Mordecai, and basically saying, guys, we need to hurry like crazy. We need this place conquered by the time Horus takes Terra, because if we can't offer Cthonia to him as, a gift, that now he's the new emperor, he will have our heads for failure. And so he's really whipping them up, trying to get them very anxious and despondent about this fight that feels so very insignificant. So the traitors are getting frenzied with mixed emotions, while the loyalists are just getting sad. And one thing the book noted that I really appreciated is that this message did more to destroy the loyalists than any weapon Varen had thrown at them so far. It was an immediate and palpable effect as we set up for the grand ending of this story. It's brutal. And that is where we're going to pick up next time. Thank you all so much. Leave your ideas in the comments down below. What do you think is the side that, I don't know, who would you like to see win, right? And forget the end of the book. What would you like? I'm curious. Leave in the comments down below and I will chat with you all very, very soon. Happy wargaming.